Some adventure for a cause, others for glory, and still others to protect the innocent. There are those, however, who only adventure for the money. Mercenaries, bounty hunters, soldiers of fortune, whose only loyalty is to their paymaster. Today we're going to meet one such warrior who finds that a goddess can be a fine employer as long as you can trust her to keep the contract.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a profitable episode of The Dungeon Crashers. I'm Guy.
And I'm Zapeel. Before we get started, remember to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our exciting D&D content. And please share our video with all your friends, because, like today's hero, we would sure like to start getting paid. A while back, we had a request from Thiago Carvalho for a bounty hunter type character. We referred him to the Black Fur video, which is exactly what he was asking for. But the idea stuck with us to make another such character, and we thought it would fit really nicely with our Dragonborn party. We only have this and one other build left in the Chromatic Dragonborn party, so be sure to cast your vote for the next party we build. The Soldier of Fortune archetype has a long literary history. Characters like Han Solo, Boba Fett, the Mandalorian from Star Wars, Deadpool from Marvel, John Wick, the A-Team, and the Magnificent Seven are all always popular. Oftentimes, these characters find a higher calling and end up serving a cause. Others just get their pay and move on. Today's hero is going to be a little bit of both. This is the fourth member of our Dragonborn party, and he is the White Dragonborn. We are using the Chromatic Dragonborn from the Fitzbin's Treasury of Dragons. They are medium-sized but tend to stand taller than humans on average. Their move speed is 30 feet, and they have chromatic ancestry, which traces back to one of the chromatic dragons, in this case white, that gives them certain abilities. They gain a breath weapon that allows them to replace one of their attacks with a 30-foot line of cold when they take the attack action. Creatures in the line make a dexterity save or take 1d10 cold damage. This damage increases at 5th, 11th, and 17th levels, just like a cantrip. The save DC is 8 plus the dragon's proficiency and constitution modifiers. They can use this breath weapon a number of times per day equal to their proficiency modifiers. The White Dragonborn also have resistance to cold damage, and when they reach 5th level, they can spend an action once per long rest to gain immunity to cold for 1 minute. Dragonborn speak common and one language of their choice that the DM thinks is appropriate. In our campaign, this language is Draconic, and that is what we're going to take here. Chromatic Dragonborn get the ability bonuses common with newer races in 5e, which are 3 plus 1 bonuses that they can put wherever they want, but no more than 2 in one ability. We put a 15 on Strength, making it 17 with 2 of our bonus points. We put an 8 on Dexterity. Our hero is going to be wearing heavy armor, so he only needs Dexterity for initiative, so we can afford a small penalty here. We put a 14 on Constitution. We are making a melee fighter, so hit points are important. We put an 8 on Intelligence. Even though 8 is the lowest you can go with the point-buy system, it doesn't mean the character is stupid, only slightly below average. We often roleplay 8 intelligence characters as being stupid, but that's a roleplay choice, not a requirement. Lastly, we put a 15 on Charisma, making it 16 with the last bonus. Our hero has an aggressive and forceful personality and is used to getting what he wants. For a mercenary, a great choice of background is the Mercenary Veteran background from the Sword Coast Adventures Guide. It gives the skills Athletics and Persuasion, and proficiency with the gaming set and land vehicles such as chariots and wagons. The main feature of this background is mercenary life. They know a lot about mercenary life and can identify mercenary companies by their insignia, locate taverns and pubs where mercenaries congregate, and find work as a mercenary.
Our hero's war journal begins. The Gimp found me on a battlefield. Where else would I be? I've been fighting almost as long as I could walk. There wasn't much else for me. I wasn't born with magic like my sisters, and I didn't have the book smarts to study it, and I sure wasn't going to end up pushing a plow. So when the Iron Company came through town looking for recruits, I signed right up. They don't see a lot of Dragonborn in the region, but there isn't much prejudice in the unit. As long as you can hold your own in a fight, you're one of them, and as it turned out, I could. We had just finished fighting against the Red Duke. This time we weren't fighting for pay, we were fighting to get paid. The Duke hired us to put down a peasant uprising, but when we did, he decided he didn't need to pay us. His mistake. Now his head's on a stake, his gold is in our pockets, and his peasants control a duchy. Well, it's for as long as they can keep it anyway. I was taking night watch when he found me. He was a scrawny thing, a dragonborn like me, but black-scaled and small. He carried a dagger, but didn't look like a warrior. I should have hauled him in front of the sergeant to find out what he was doing in our camp, but there was something about him, so I listened to what he had to say. Turns out he had a powerful and wealthy patron who wanted to hire me. Not the company or a squad, just me, and was going to give me 500 gold pieces up front if I left tonight. Well, I'm not totally without loyalty, but our contract was up, and 500 crowns is a lot of money. So I finished my watch, packed my gear, and told the Sarge I was moving on, and followed a little run on whatever scheme his mistress was paying me for. Our hero begins play as a fighter. He gets 2 skills from the fighter list, and he chooses insight and intimidation. A mercenary has to be able to trust his gut, and other people need to know not to cross him. He gets proficiency with all armor, shields, simple and martial weapons. For equipment, he has chainmail and a shield and will always want the heaviest armor he can afford. He carries a one-handed melee weapon. Any one that does a d8 damage will work, but he's taken a longsword. He also has a pair of hand axes for throwing and a dagger. He has proficiency in strength and constitution saves. At first level, fighters gain a fighting style, and he takes dueling, adding +2 to the damage he does when wielding a melee weapon in one hand. This also applies to melee weapons with the thrown properties, such as his axes or dagger, even when he throws those weapons. First level fighters also get second wind, allowing them to use a bonus action to heal 1d10 plus their fighter level and hit points once per short or long rest. Another War Journal entry. This job has been a tough one. The Gimp set out to gather together a group of Dragonborn to deal with some of his mistress's enemies. They're a good bunch, a lot of power. Even the Gimp is pretty good in a fight, using magic, of course. I had him pegged for a sorcerer as soon as I saw him, and I wasn't wrong. We also have a good archer, some sort of fire witch, and a damn berserker. They definitely needed my help. The archer seems like he knows his way around the battlefield, but none of them have any military discipline. I don't think they would have gotten far without me to lead them. It's a tough job, but I have good troops and a big bag of coin. The problem is that the mistress isn't just some dame with a lot of money. She's a dragon. And not just any dragon, but a dragon queen. Not exactly what I signed up for. Well, one night the Gimp comes out and says the mistress wants to talk to me, and I'm like, what, right now? Did she fly into camp or something? He says, no, in his tent. She'll contact me with magic. Again, not what I signed up for, but the boss is a boss, so I do it. I'm not ashamed to say it. Her voice shook me to the bones. Had I been able to see her instead of just hear her, I probably would have soiled my armor. To make a long story short, she wanted me to be her sworn warrior. Well, that's not my sort of thing, but I wasn't going to talk back to her, so I listened, and she made a good case. She'd give me wealth and power, and in exchange I'd conquer her enemies and send them screaming to hell. So I took the deal. I didn't get a contract or anything, but really, I'm pretty sure she can afford her end, and if she did rip me off, there isn't much I could do about it anyway.
True. At second level, after swearing loyalty to Tiamat, our hero becomes a first level paladin. He gains divine sense, letting him use an action to detect any fiends, celestials, or undead that are within 60 feet and not behind total cover. He can use this ability a number of times per long rest equal to his charisma modifier +1. I don't know how it works in other people's games, but in ours, this is mostly a roleplay ability. In most cases, if a fiend, celestial, or undead is within 60 feet and not behind total cover, then you already know it's there. This could be handy if the thing you are detecting is invisible, but it doesn't say that you can see it or know its exact location, so still, it's not great. It also lets you detect consecrated or desecrated areas, which is probably more useful. They also get Lay on Hands, which is a pool of hit points equal to 5 times their paladin level, and they can use them to heal themselves or others. With an action, they can touch someone and heal them any amount of hit points from their pool. They can also spend 5 of those hit points to cure the subject of any poisons or diseases it may be suffering from. This is a much better ability. Taking an action to use it isn't great, but being able to control how much you heal is, and having the way to cure the poison condition is very good to have at low level. At third level, our hero becomes second level of Paladin and gains a fighting style. He chooses Blessed Warrior, letting him choose 2 cantrips from the cleric list, and he takes Toll the Dead and Sacred Flame. This gives him the ability to target 2 different saving throws, Wisdom and Dexterity, and deal 2 different damage types, Necrotic and Radiant, that both often aren't resisted. This will give him a good range alternative to throwing axes, but with his strength and the dueling style, throwing axes is still a good choice. He also gains spellcasting, getting 2 first-level spell slots, and paladins are prepared casters and can prepare a number of spells equal to their paladin level plus their charisma modifier rounded down, so 4 for now. As this character is going to use the smite spells, we are going to try to avoid taking a lot of other spells that require concentration. For now, he wants Searing Smite and Wrathful Smite. Searing Smite deals an extra 1d6 of fire damage on the next attack you make, and the target must make a save or be lit on fire, taking 1d6 fire damage every round until the spell ends or it makes a save at the start of its next turn, or a creature spends an action to put out the flames. Wrathful Smite deals an extra 1d6 psychic damage, and the target makes a wisdom save or is frightened of him until the spell ends, or it makes a save on the start of its next turn. For the rest of your spells, choose utility and healing options like Cure Wounds and Detect Magic. Instead of casting spells, a Paladin can use his spell slots for Divine Smite. When he hits an opponent, the Paladin can spend a spell slot, and the attack deals 1d8 additional radiant damage, plus an additional 1d8 per level of the spell slot.
Another entry in the War Journal reads, "That Dragon Queen is a demanding boss. It turns out her name is Tiamat, and a lot of dragons worship her as a goddess, and she sure acts like one. Good thing she pays well. It seems we've been fighting non-stop, with an occasional break to get a few drinks and spend some of the loot we've been collecting. One time we were sleeping in a tavern we had ransacked, and I hear her voice again. Scary stuff. I don't recommend it. She wants me to swear an oath to her. I thought I already had, but anyway, I wasn't quite as scared as I was the first time, and I remembered to ask what was in it for me. And she told me that she would give me great power and make my enemies cower in fear before me, and all I had to do was swear to be her servant. I had to admit, she's kept up her end so far, and I was curious to see what else she had to offer, so I agreed and took the oath. I was half expecting some sort of light show or angels singing or that sort of thing, but nothing much happened except that her presence went away, and it seemed like she was a little smug about it. At 4th level, our hero becomes a 3rd level Paladin. He gains immunity to disease and an additional 1st level spell slot. He also takes an oath, in this case the Oath of Conquest. While alignment isn't a big deal in 5e, most of the Paladin oaths are really suited to good alignment. The Vengeance Paladin could go either way, but it still seems slanted towards good. But the Conquest Paladin's perfect for an evil character. Crushing your enemies, inspiring fear in any who think about opposing you, crushing their spirits, that's the stuff that wakes an evil character up in the morning. A Conquest Paladin could be a good, of course, depending on how you roleplay it, but they make great villains. Conquest Paladins get oath spells, which are spells that they get at certain levels that are always prepared and don't count against the number of spells they can prepare. The spells they get at 3rd level are Armor of Agathis and Command. These spells are perfect for us. The armor has an hour duration, doesn't require concentration, gives temporary hit points, and punishes enemies that hit us. It even deals cold damage, which works with our White Dragon aesthetic. And Command is versatile and powerful. It can make enemies flee or fall prone, drop their weapons, and many other things depending on your creativity. The problem is that we have a lot of uses for our limited spell slots and have to be careful how we use them. And they also get a use of Channel Divinity, every short rest, and 2 ways to use it. The first is Guided Strike. When making an attack, he can use Channel Divinity to add +10 to the roll. This is good. A +10 will almost guarantee a hit, which can be great if you need to land a smite right now. But the second use, Conquering Presence, is the one we will want to use the most often. It causes every creature of our choice within 30 feet to make a wisdom save or be frightened for 1 minute, or until it makes a save at the end of its turn. Frightened creatures have disadvantage on attacks and ability checks as long as they can see you, so this is a great thing to do to a group of enemies. And at 5th level, he becomes a 4th level Paladin, getting an ability score improvement or feat, and he's going to take the Dragon Fear feat. This gives him a +1 to Strength, Constitution, or Charisma, and he's going to make his Strength 18. It also allows him to spend a use of his breath weapon to instead roar, causing each creature of his choice within 20 feet to make a wisdom save, or be frightened of him for 1 minute. The DC for the save is 8, plus his proficiency and charisma modifiers. If an affected creature takes damage, it can make a new save to end the effect. His cantrips and breath weapons also improve, gaining another dice of damage, and he can prepare an additional spell. Adding Thunderous Smite could be useful. It deals an additional 2d6 thunder damage, and enemies save or be pushed back and knocked prone. A short excerpt from his War Journal reads, "The fighting has been fierce. I've never seen anything like it. My troops are becoming hard as nails and cruel as devils. I wonder if it's ever going to end, and sometimes I don't want it to. After what we've been through, spending coin in a tavern seems like a waste of time. The lady has definitely kept her word. I've got all the money I could want. My enemies tremble before me. But it seems that more and more all I care about is the next battle and the next victory."
At 6th level, he becomes a 5th level Paladin. He gains extra attack, letting him attack twice instead of once when taking the attack action. Since he can replace one of his attacks with a breath weapon or a roar, he can now ice or frighten a group of enemies and still make an attack. He also gains 2 2nd level spell slots and can prepare 2nd level spells. He might start preparing Branding Smite for dealing with invisible enemies, and for utility options, Lesser Restoration and Prayer of Healing are available. For oath spells, he gets Spiritual Weapon and Hold Person, which are 2 more excellent spells. Spiritual Weapon is a cleric staple, making an attack on every turn for a minute and doesn't require concentration. Casting it and attacking with it do require a bonus action, and we have a lot of uses for those, but the weapon doesn't disappear if you don't use it on a particular turn, so it's still a great option. Whole person requires concentration, but is totally worth it. Not only are the paralyzed enemies incapacitated, attacks against them have advantage, and if you are within 5 feet of them, attacks are automatic criticals. Just a reminder, smite damage dice are also doubled on a critical hit. At 7th level, he becomes a 6th level paladin, gaining Aura of Protection. He and any allies within 10 feet can add his charisma modifier to their saving throws. This is one of the best things about being a paladin, and makes it so that he can have a good chance of making even his weaker saves like dexterity and intelligence. He can also prepare another spell, so continue choosing a utility or healing options. At 8th level, he takes 7th level of paladin. From Oath of Conquest, he gains Aura of Conquest, which extends 10 feet from him in all directions, and any creature in that aura that is frightened of him has its speed reduced to 0 and takes psychic damage equal to half his paladin level if it starts its turn there. Our hero has many ways to make his enemies fear him: Conquering Presence, Dragon Fear, and Wrathful Smite, so he will get a lot of value out of this aura. He gains a 3rd, 2nd level spell slot as well. At 9th level, he gains 8th level of Paladin, getting another ability score improvement or a feat, and he takes the Shield Master feat. This gives him 3 abilities. First, he can add his shield bonus to any dexterity save he makes against spells or effects that target only him. Second, when he makes a dexterity save that would let him take half damage, he can use his reaction to cover himself with his shield and take no damage instead. Lastly, he can use his bonus action on his turn to shove a creature that is within 5 feet. The first 2 abilities are good, but the third is what we are taking this for. A shove can be used to knock enemies prone. Resisting a shove is a strength check. Frightened creatures have disadvantage on ability checks. Frightened creatures in your aura have their movement reduced to 0, so are unable to get up from being prone. Prone enemies have disadvantage on attack rolls, but they already have that if they are frightened. However, if you are within 5 feet of a prone enemy, you have advantage on attacks against them. So shove an enemy with your bonus action, then make 2 attacks with advantage, and then on the enemy's turn, they have disadvantage to attack you and can't get up. He can also prepare 1 more spell at this level for a total of 7.
A war journal entry following the Great Magus battle. After years of fighting, we finally get a break in the battle. We were living in a mansion that used to belong to some wizard who was trying to thwart the lady's schemes. After taking him out, we didn't get any more instructions from our employer, so we just moved in. After a show of force, the local villagers didn't give us any trouble, and we had enough gold to soothe any hard feelings they might have over us killing the local wizard. So before long, we had a house full of fine food and busy servants. Taking a break from battle made me realize that I really haven't put any work into my training. I've become more of a butcher than a swordsman, and I vowed to change that. I hired a local swordmaster to come spar with me, and even though he hadn't seen much real battle, he knew a lot about fighting with a blade, and I soaked up the lessons. At 10th level, our hero becomes a 2nd level fighter, getting Action Surge. Once per short or long rest, he can take an extra action on his turn. Normally he would use this to take another attack action, but there are times when taking the dodge or disengage action could be useful, and he could also cast a spell and still make a full attack. At 11th level, our hero's renewed commitment to his swordsmanship pays off, and he becomes a 3rd level fighter, gaining his martial archetype, and he chooses Battle Master. He gains combat superiority, giving him 4 superiority dice, which are d8s that he can spend to use maneuvers. He regains all expended dice when he finishes a short or long rest. Some maneuvers require a saving throw, and the DC for these is 8 plus his proficiency and strength modifiers. He learns 3 maneuvers from the list, and the first he takes is Riposte. When an enemy misses him with an attack, he can use his reaction to spend a superiority dice to make a melee attack against that opponent and add the superiority dice to the damage. The second is Menacing Attack. He can spend a superiority dice to add a d8 damage to an attack, and the target must make a wisdom save or be frightened of him until the end of his next turn. This is yet another way to frighten an enemy and get all the benefits you gain from doing that. And for the third, he takes Trip Attack, allowing him to spend a superiority dice to add the superiority dice and damage to the attack, and the opponent must make a strength save or be knocked prone, and knocking enemy prone is one of our favorite things to do. If he had multiple frightened enemies around him, he could use his attack to strike once with his maneuver, and then shove another enemy, then use a bonus action to shove a third enemy with his shield. His cantrips and breath weapons improve here as well, getting a 3rd dice of damage. He also uses this break from battle to enjoy more peaceful pursuits. He gains Student of War, gaining proficiency with an artisan's tool of his choice, and he's going to take painter's supplies to indulge his artistic side. And in another journal entry he states, "As much as I was enjoying our time away from battle, I was still pleased when the mistress called us back to the fight. I need the roar of the battlefield and the thrill of conquest. It's better than any wine or drug. Fortunately, our employer has many enemies, so we gather what possessions we need and leave the house behind us. We've already deposited our wealth in various banks and holding companies, as well as buying fine jewels, which are easier to carry around than bags of coin.
At 12th level, he gains 4th level of fighter, getting an ability score bonus or a feat, and he's going to make his charisma 18. This will strengthen his spellcasting, his aura, and his dragon fear, as well as his persuasion and intimidation skills. At 13th level, he becomes a 5th level fighter. He would gain extra attack here, but he already has that from Paladin. At 14th level, he becomes a 6th level of fighter, getting another ability score improvement or a feat, and he's going to take the tough feat. His hit points are lacking for a primary melee character. We could improve his constitution, but his aura and proficiency already give him a good constitution saves, so this will give him twice the extra hit points that he would get from an increase in constitution. At 15th level, he becomes 7th level of fighter. From Battle Master, he gets Know Your Enemy, which lets him spend 1 minute outside of combat studying an opponent to learn various information about them. How good this is depends on your campaign. If it includes a lot of roleplay and intrigue, this could be very useful ability, but in a dungeon crawl, it will probably never be used. He also gains a 5th superiority dice and learns 2 more maneuvers. The first he takes is Brace, which lets him use a reaction when an enemy comes within 5 feet of him to spend a superiority dice to make a melee attack at that enemy and add the superiority dice to the damage. The second he takes is Precision Attack. Before making an attack roll, he can spend a superiority dice and add the number rolled to the d20 roll he makes for his attack. At 16th level, he becomes 8th level of fighter, getting yet another ability score improvement or a feat, and he's going to cap his strength at 20.
A short entry following the victory at the Scorched Fields. We have battled the Queen's enemies in the mortal world and beyond, scattering them before us, and we are lavish with riches from her vast hoard. I'm appointed her warlord, and she puts devils and even dragons under my command. At 17th level, he becomes a 9th level fighter and gains the use of Indomitable, allowing him to re-roll a failed save once per long rest. This combined with his aura protection will make sure he rarely fails a saving throw. His cantrips and breath weapon improve again, getting a 4th dice of damage. At 18th level, he becomes a 10th level fighter, gaining improved combat superiority. His superiority dice become d10s, and he learns 2 more maneuvers. For the first, he takes Lunging Attack, letting him spend a superiority dice to add 5 feet to the reach of an attack, and add the superiority dice to the damage. For the second, he takes Quick Toss, which lets him spend a superiority dice to use a bonus action to draw and throw a weapon with the thrown property, such as one of his hand axes. This will give him yet another option for his bonus action, and a little more power in range combat, which isn't his specialty. At 19th level, he becomes an 11th level fighter, getting improved extra attack, allowing him to make 3 attacks instead of 2 when making the attack action. Considering the large range of options he has with his attacks, and having Action Surge available, he's going to have explosive turns every round of combat. One thing to remember, though, is that superiority dice, spell slots, and breath weapons are all limited resources, and while he's still powerful without them, he should manage them carefully. The last journal entry says, "The Queen's enemies have fallen before our forces. My troops and I stand high in her favor, with only her consorts and a few dukes of hell ranking above us. We are showered with every luxury we can imagine, and devils do our bidding, but the war isn't over. It'll never be over until all who would oppose Queen Tiamat have been slain or enslaved, and the entire world bows before her legion of dragons." At 20th level, he becomes a 12th level fighter, getting a last ability score improvement or feat, and he caps his charisma at 20 to make his magical abilities as strong as his physical ones.
This is a very powerful character, having multiple ways to frighten enemies and ways to take advantage of them being frightened. He is a very versatile fighter with a lot of options in combat and the ability to deal large amounts of damage. His biggest weakness is his limited resources. Having only 8 levels of Paladin means he only has a few spell slots and a lot of things he wants to use them for. His Dragon Breath is also limited, and his Superiority Dice, Action Surge, and Second Wind are also limited resources, but fortunately they recover on a short rest. He is also not very strong at ranged combat. His cantrips and thrown weapons give him something useful to do against enemies at range, but his greatest powers is only useful in melee combat. Also, unless he acquires a magic item that gives him the ability, he is unable to fly, so flying enemies can be a real problem for him. However, his strengths far outweigh his weaknesses, and he's a fearsome opponent. We hope you enjoyed this character and might even like to play him yourself. If so, please let us know in the comments along with any questions, suggestions, or build ideas. And join us next week when we give you the mighty barbarian that is the last member of our Dragonborn party. And until then,
Cheers!